Hello everyone and welcome to this new video. Today we'll talk about Twinmotion for Revit. As some of you may know, Twinmotion is now included in Revit subscriptions and AEC Collection subscriptions. So if you have an active subscription and you already installed Revit 2023 and all the latest updates, simply download and install Twinmotion as well, and you'll have that integration between the two platforms. We can easily take any Revit model into Twinmotion for Revit and start bringing any design to life with animations, paths, characters, and many more assets available. So let's explore together some of the key functionality items inside Twinmotion. Of course, there's much more than what you'll see in this video, but it will serve as a start point to explore more and achieve great visuals for our projects. So first we'll start with Revit. Of course, we need an existing 3D model or one we are working with right now, and all we need to do is to have a 3D view and go directly to the View tab and select Twinmotion for Revit. Once we do that, we'll be launching Twinmotion for Revit. And here we have specific options that we can select from of what exactly we want to import from Revit to Twinmotion. In this case, I'm not going to modify anything. I leave everything as is and simply click OK. Now that we have our Revit project inside of Twinmotion, we can start exploring the options available in Twinmotion for Revit. So first, let's understand the user interface. It's quite simple. Our model is in the middle of a 3D city. Of course, we can later on modify the exact location that our project is in, but this gives us an idea of how the 3D model was placed from Revit inside Twinmotion. Now, the different commands for movements, as we can see here, are of course right click, left click, certain letters for either zooming in or out, up or down, depending on what we want to do with our location, and movement inside Twinmotion. After exploring our first impressions, we can also see that there is an icon for inputs and a clear Revit input. So we don't need to do anything at this point, but as you know, you can also import other 3D objects and projects to Twinmotion. Let's start looking at the project location. Here you can type any location around the world so that your project is visually presented in that specific place. For this example, I'm going to search for Dubai and take a look at the map. We can see different areas of the city here, like of course the famous Palm, but I'm going to select a location inside JVC or Jumeirah Village Circle for this example. We simply grab that location, and then the system will update the 3D surroundings to fit the specific area that we selected from the map. As you can see, some examples of buildings were also imported into our project. We can further modify that if we need to do that, or if we have more detailed building replicas as an object or different types of 3D items. Now, what about simulating a specific season and weather for our project? Here in Twinmotion, we can select different seasons from summer to winter to maybe autumn or fall, please take a look at the trees and everything that is surrounding our model. It's much more realistic, and the more we work on adding vegetation and other items into the project, it will look really great for our renders and videos. We can also play with the weather if we want to simulate some rain or sunlight as well. If we go to additional effects, we can also control things like the smog or wind speed or direction and create the desired effect that we need for the weather and season. We can also modify specific date and times of the year. So depending on that calendar, date and time of the day, we will see the different shadows that are part of the 3D environment. If we have those additional buildings or more vegetation, more elements around our 3D model, it will also give us very realistic renders and images of our project. This is really useful if you need to show your clients how the project would look like in different seasons throughout the year with different scenarios, maybe different surrounding buildings and more. Now, what else can we do in Twinmotion? What about materials? This is really endless. Of course, these materials came from Revit, but still I can further modify them in Twinmotion. The reflection, the scale, the exact color, if I have a code that I need to replicate from my client or from the supplier for that material, I can also do it here. But there's also this metallic option that we can turn on and off. I'll keep it on right now because it looks a bit nicer. But again, there are also materials inside of Twinmotion that we can use. Materials for different parts of our project, maybe the floor, the ceiling, the walls, windows. In this case, let's try some materials for the roof and see how they will interact with our entire project. Testing the different materials is quite simple. You just drag and drop the desired material to the surface where you want to apply it. And like you can see here, we can also play with all the components for this library. So even if we select an existing material from the library, we can also modify the scale, the reflection, and the other parameters as well. Let's assume that we are satisfied with our roof for now, so let's test some materials for the windows. We have a mirror type glass that if we applied it would look like this, or we can use a transparent material for the windows as well. If we go into the objects library, we'll find so many categories of objects that we can use in our projects: outdoor furniture, indoor furniture, and even exotic applications and equipment that maybe it's not very common, but for a specific project it would be useful. And that's what I really like about Twinmotion. The library is huge. You can search for different 3D objects. In this case, we'll use a simple chair for our outdoor patio, and we can of course place it into the surface that we need each item, rotate the item, or make any modifications with a simple click. If you really like a 3D object and you use it often, you can select the heart icon and make them a favorite. So then with the favorite filter, you can find commonly used 3D objects very easily. As you can see, some of the items have a download icon next to them. This means that they're part of the library, but you haven't downloaded them yet. To have access to the entire library, you need to create a free Epic account. Another one of my favorite features in Twinmotion are the characters. So let's say that we are happy with how our project is looking like, with some materials, some furniture, but we want to add more dynamic feel to the 3D model. It's so easy to add characters from different maybe origins, dress codes, and interact with them in the way you prefer. You can add groups of characters, individual characters, characters talking, moving, playing, depending on the activity that you want to showcase. And with a few clicks, now our design looks much more presentable to clients. And of course, dynamic for our outputs that we'll see later on, like images, renders, and videos. I really like how diverse the characters are. So if you, like me, are working in the Middle East, you have all of these characters that are based on local traditions and dress codes as well, which I find really interesting for making more local-based projects and give them a real look and feel. If we go back to our favorite items, this is how we can quickly use this set of chairs that we like now for a terrace application. Now maybe we want to modify the floor that we have for this terrace. There are different materials in the library. We can use these for walls. They could be applied for the floor, but I'll try to find a more appropriate one, maybe with another material type. Let's browse the options that we have here in the library. Maybe we can use concrete, for example, for our floor. Let's see how that looks like. Again, we just drag and drop that material onto the surface that we want that applied to. I think it looks fine. Maybe we can modify the floor type for our outdoor patio as well. Let's try this one. I think it looks fine. And this is some grass I added earlier. It's still there. For the trees, of course, we can replace the existing location and add a new tree, but in this case, just to make it faster, I'm going to delete the existing trees that came from Revit and add the real vegetation types that exist in our library within Twinmotion. I think the vegetation components in Twinmotion are one of the key elements in the system because the library is really massive. You can apply many types of vegetation from trees, grass, bushes, etc. In random patterns, specific locations, and this makes the design much more realistic with a few clicks, and it's quite simple to use, as you can see here. If we want to modify the location for our tree or bring it up or down a little bit, we can also do that with a few clicks. Now let's add another grass component to our vegetation. We can modify the diameter of our brush and again add it very carefully or just randomly around a certain area. How this shows up in your model will depend, of course, on your graphics card, so we do recommend that you use a powerful computer for using Twinmotion, but the realistic views on the vegetation are amazing. And considering the amount of time that it took us to add these trees, the palms, some grass around the project, and it already looks much better than what we started with when we imported our project. Now let's go back to the main library and select vehicles. Inside the vehicles library, we have cars, buses, boats, bicycles, motorcycles, etc. Again, we have a wide range of 3D assets to choose from, very realistic 3D assets. So with a few clicks, I can add this SUV and cars to my project. We can also modify the color of the cars, so this is great. Now let's add one more vehicle next to our SUV. This comes off red. Maybe we want to change that to light gray. And last but not least, maybe let's add another type of vehicle so we complete our garage. So here we have bicycles and motorcycles. Maybe let's add one motorcycle to end our garage. So these are some of the commonly used vehicle types for projects. But let's say that you want to also represent something more specific, maybe a construction project. You want to showcase where your crane will be located, where you'll have different types of equipment and machines. Maybe your project is next to a construction site, I don't know. So let's test these 3D assets and see how they look like. This is an animated crane. You can see the shadow, how it's moving. Okay, but it's really big. The scale is huge compared to our project, so maybe this one doesn't go very well with what we're doing now, but take a look and test all the 3D assets in the library so you get ideas of where you could use these assets. We can test this smaller excavator and see how it looks like. It's animated as well. So now imagine you are designing this project and maybe you have an aerial view, maybe you have an image, a panorama, or a video output. All these animations add up to that. But that's not it. We also have bosses. So let's add one to our project. Great, so now we have our project with a few vehicles we've added. But there's another really interesting functionality inside Twinmotion that you should definitely check out, and that is the path. The path animation can be applied to different 3D assets. One of the 3D asset categories that it's directly included in the menu is the vehicle path. With this functionality, we can easily create a specific path where we want cars moving, and that configuration of cars moving can be also customized to the direction we need, the speed we need, density, etc. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a moment. So let's draw a path for our vehicles in the street just in front of our project. Once we've defined our vehicle path, we can simply zoom in a little bit more so we can see all the changes appropriately, but there are different things we can modify in the settings, like lane count, 2 lanes if you want one lane going one direction and the opposite lane in the other direction, lane offset if you want to leave more space between lanes, density, so the amount of vehicles that will be moving in your path, the speed, of course, and reverse in case you need to have the lanes go in the opposite direction. So let's see this in action. If we increase the offset, it's widening our lanes and the distance between our 2 lanes. Let's, for example, increase the speed. So those are the effects that you can modify within this animation, but it's really fast and simple. This is how the reverse option looks like. So now our cars are going in the opposite direction. If we turn on the 2 lanes, that means that whatever number of lanes we already have, in this case 2, it will double that in the opposite direction. If you have only 1 lane, then you'll have 2, 1 on each direction, etc. That's the logic behind the different parameters, but it's quick and easy, and you can just play with it and see what looks better in your project or what you're trying to represent in your video. Now, what about a character path? We want to represent a similar concept of these cars, but now with people walking in a certain direction with a certain density and even outfits and different parameters that we can also modify for the character path. Let's draw an initial path and see how that looks like and if we need to make any edits. Again, if we zoom in to our newly created character path, we can see that there's already some characters walking in that path. We can modify the type of characters walking, the clothes they are wearing, street clothes, office clothes, travel, beach, traditional. So it depends on the project you are trying to animate. Of course, if you are talking about maybe a school or just a casual occasion, you can have streetwear. If you need to showcase something like an airport, maybe you'll use the travel option, etc. We also can turn on and off the walk command. If we turn it off, the characters will just be standing on a line. Maybe if you want to represent some entrance to an event or something where there's a line. Otherwise, you'll have the different animations of walk on, and you can again modify the width like we saw with the vehicles, the density, etc. For this specific project, we'll keep the street clothing since it can apply to different settings. Maybe this is a project for residential or a sales office, something of that nature. But then, let's imagine that we want to connect this path to our bus to represent people coming from the bus and walking to our sales office. So all we need to do is select the existing path and modify it accordingly. Of course, maybe we decide to further modify this path because the people are getting out of the bus in the middle of the street, so we can just move the bus and coordinate the space. I hope you're enjoying this video and learning more about some of the features existing in Twinmotion for Revit. Now, something that I find quite impressive is I didn't modify the terrain, so when the cars animation are going on top of that grass, they actually move, like they're going on top of a bump or something. That's quite interesting. Let's finish our design with a few extra characters. And again, the character library, it's very big. It's not just human characters, but we actually also have animals and some other 3D assets as well. Let's take a look. Let's say we want to add Felix the cat to our outdoor patio. If we add him in the floor and then we want to move him around to another surface, we'll have to delete the 3D object and add Felix again. Because I tried doing this in the chairs, but it's not going to do it automatically. So we'll have to, again, drag and drop the 3D object from the library directly onto the seat for it to work. This time I did it right, so when you drag and drop Felix, you have to select the location or the surface immediately and then it will be automatic. So make sure that before you add your 3D assets, you know where you want to place them and the system will do that for you. Now let's add Gideon the dog as well. I hope this video has been useful and now you have a lot of ideas of how to use Twinmotion for Revit and improve your design outputs, whether those are images or videos. So quickly, how can you export these type of assets from your Twinmotion animation? You simply select a view and click Create Image and that will save it for you. Then you can simply export it in different file formats according to what you indicate Twinmotion. For video, it works with capturing certain frames, so you just position the exact snapshot that you want and then you can either zoom in or zoom out depending on the views that you need, and with the plus sign you keep adding frames until you are comfortable with the sequence of your video. You can simply play it to see if this is the end result that you want and add or remove frames as well. And once our desired outputs are ready to go, we simply select the specific image and output that we want, and when we export it, it will ask us for a specific location to save these assets, and that's it. You've created stunning design and visuals from your Revit model with Twinmotion in just a few minutes. Last but not least, another amazing feature from Twinmotion is that you can actually use HDRI environments, which are more realistic photos or combination of photos that bring much more texture and specific brightness into the image. It just looks more realistic when it's reflecting certain materials, etc. So take a look at how an example of an HDRI image or environment changes the entire setting inside Twinmotion. Now that our entire project is looking much more real, we can capture another image and export it as well. And with this, we've finished exploring Twinmotion for the first time. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you next time.